Normally, I'm a sucker for a good 1980s horror story because I really like this one. Hi guys, it's April, and I'm going to do this review the same way I do all of my other reviews. I'm going to have the non-spoilery section up front, followed by the spoiled-filled dump afterwards, in case you don't want to spoil yourself. But this is a judgment-free zone, so spoil yourself as much as you want. Sometimes I like to eat dessert before dinner. No judgment. I received a copy of Ghost Tree by Christina Henry for a free and honest review, but that in no way has swayed my opinion on this book. And guys, I have a lot of things to talk about. So this is the story of a small Midwestern town called Smith Hollows in 1985, and two girls are found brutally murdered and torn apart. As shocking as that might be, it appears as if this isn't the first murder of its kind in this town, yet no one seems to want to do anything about it. This story follows the perspective of several of the different townspeople. You have Lauren, who is a 14-year-old girl whose father had died the year previous. You have a new cop in town, Alex or Alejandro from Chicago, who is starting to dig into these murders. You also have Lauren's mom, Karen, and Lauren's friend, Miranda. There's also several other side characters that you get to see their perspective of as the story progresses, and it switches each chapter so you can see more of the story unfolding. Because it is written this way, the story feels like it flows very quickly, and I really enjoyed that aspect. I always wanted to know more. I wanted to piece all of it together. This is an adult horror suspense thriller type of read. It does contain some very graphic murders and adult relationship, but it does build suspense that creates this very moody atmosphere that I really appreciated. Now, I will say some of the twists and turns are very predictable, but I do like the lore that this book lays down and the family history of this town and why things happen the way they do. The backstory of everything I found really, really fascinating, which is why I think this ended up being a very quick read. Christina Henry did a very good job of building up this 80s atmosphere and then adding the suspense, making things very captivating so that I wanted more of the story, even though I could kind of guess where things were going. And sometimes that's okay. I don't need to be surprised by the end goal if the story is compelling enough. Henry also did a very good job of taking characters that I initially found very annoying and young or just not the type of people I normally want to associate with, but then she starts to build up their backstory and the reasons for why they are the way they are, and you start to really connect with a lot of these characters. And as the story weaves together and characters start interacting with each other, just the feel of this town in general, I liked how it was laid out, and I think Christina Henry did a very good job of that. Overall, there were some very gruesome parts in this story, but it leaned more towards that suspense and that thriller and building up that atmosphere and that moodiness, which really is what drove the book more than the horror part of this, which is why I think I enjoyed this book as much as I did. This is maybe the second book that I've read by Christina Henry, and I think at this point, I can safely say I like the way she writes and the way she develops characters, and I know I'm probably going to pick up more of her books in the future. I like how she darkens characters and fills everything out. So if you are looking for a horror read as it slowly turns into fall, or if you're just looking for a read that has that suspenseful thriller horror vibe, any time of the year, I think they are good. I highly recommend this book, and this is the point in which I am going to start putting out spoilers. So if you haven't read the book, I highly recommend that you go pick it up and come back and we will start a conversation. And of course, let me know down below if you are going to do that, because then I can look forward to seeing your comments again in the future. But now I am just going to dive into all of my thoughts, and I'm not going to censor myself in any way, shape, or fashion. You've been warned. Can I just say that I absolutely adored the supernatural twist that Christina Henry decided to go in with this story. I wasn't anticipating that it would be more towards that side of the paranormal where you've got witches and curses and things like that. I half half expected it to be more of like the demonic supernatural ghost realm, given the title of the book and the tree that is mentioned quite frequently in this book. But I did like that spin that we took on the town and the curse it was under and how it interwove with Lauren's family. The strength that it gave women in that story was fascinating as well. She had a line in the book, if I can remember what it is, and I'm actually going to read it off to you because I think it just says a lot about her writing and why I enjoyed it so much and some of the perspectives that she decided to put into this book. Spinsters are witches, and old women are witches, and single women are witches because they simply must be. Women without men must be up to no good. So this is a line that Nana ends up telling to Lauren as she's explaining the story of the town and what ultimately ends up being her own family history. And I think it says a lot, especially when we're looking that far into the past when witches were a huge, great big deal. And any woman that was seen alone, not attached to a man in some way, was automatically, there's something wrong with her. She must be up to no good. She must be a witch of some kind. And while at the same time you look at men who end up living that bachelor life, they're not questioned the same way. And that kind of questioning of how we treat the sexes is actually brought up again when we're talking about Miranda, who is Lauren's best friend, who is a little loose, as a lot of people in town associate her with, because she is very willing to do anything and everything. And if a boy is the same way, everyone's like, boys will be boys. But if you have that in a girl, in a female, we start to question her morality and how loose she is and her character. And so seeing that divide in Lauren's time compared to how her family was viewed and bringing some of those parallels into play, I liked it. And as all of the mystery of why no one was questioning these murders and forgetting about everything starts to come to light, and how some of the characters started breaking down or finding strength as this curse was slowly falling apart. I like how none of the characters were coming from the same perspective. All of them had flaws in some way. Lauren was very much that teenager who didn't want to forgive her mom for the fact that mom wasn't completely devastated that dad passed away. And mom was very naggy and a little overly aggressive towards Lauren because of some of the backstory with Lauren's dad and everything that's gone down. And then we had Miranda and her family history and why she probably was trying to get out of Smith's Hollow as much as she was. And then you have Alejandro and his family who had come down from Chicago to get away from it all and seemingly finding this perfect town, and ultimately the evil that was there slowly turning on them because they're outsiders and using the fact that they are Mexican against them, and how all of their different perspectives all felt different. That is hard to do when you're dealing with a cast that is this big, because there are several more that I haven't mentioned. And just the fact that they all seem to be able to stand up on their own, that's hard to do unless you know how to write up a story really well. And I know of very few authors that can do that. It's usually why stories are mainly centered around like 3 or 4 characters, because as soon as you start adding more and more people, they become flatter and flatter and flatter and not as enjoyable or as captivating or as fast-paced to get into and out of. And honestly, I didn't have to do any mental shifting when we switched from character to character, but I think it's because she did a very good job of finding break points in each of their perspectives and then starting the new perspective in a place where I was fascinated to learn more. And that's the reason it ended up flowing so well. And at this point, I'm fairly certain I'll probably enjoy a lot more of Christina Henry's writing. I've only read a short story collection by her centered around Alice and Alice in Wonderland, and I really enjoyed that. I don't know why I haven't picked up any of her stuff sooner. I have a lot of her stuff marked as to read on my Goodreads account, and this is just kind of the push I think I needed to pick up more of her stuff, because if they are like this, this, if they develop characters like this, if they lay out a story as captivating as this, I think we're gonna get along just fine. Tell me down below what you thought about this read. And of course, if you want to keep up to date with every time I upload a review like this, subscribe down below, and I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.